We have a recent example in Colorado of being the first to do something, right? We were the first to legalize recreational marijuana, and lots of promises were made to voters. They were going to aggressively go after the black market. That has not happened. It wasn't going to be something that children could get their hands on. That hasn't happened. And it was going to bring in all this tax money for schools. That hasn't happened. So what are we to learn from Amendment 64 when we're talking about legalizing prostitution?
Its own. This bill with the very Orwellian dystopian name, Legal Protections for the Dignity of Minors. My question is, protection for these children from whom? Because if it allows the state to take the child away from the parents who know them better than anyone, love them more than anyone, then what the state is really saying is the parents are the ones that the children need protection from. Wait, this dog just wagging his tail like it's so happy. Here's the kicker. This police officer and the neighbors have never seen this dog before or after, and the police officer actually said he thinks it was an act of God. Welcome to our show. This is my friend Mandy.
And this is my friend Deb.
And together we are Mandy and Deb. I just love it. We're so good at that. Well, welcome to the show. By the way, first things first, make sure that you subscribe, the subscribe button right there. Join us on Facebook. That would be
Mandy, ampersand, Deb.
Yes.
I didn't realize it was going to be so fancy, but there you are.
There you go. You too can say ampersand and use it. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we are so glad you joined us. Be sure to watch all of the shows on IITV. They're great. And we're going to kick it off because, Mandy, guess what?
We've got issues.
We've got issues. It's so true. Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Do we have issues this week?
And that's just not our opinion. Many people say that.
Well, Deborah, anytime the Colorado legislature is in action, we have issues.
Oh, my goodness.
At this point.
Yeah. Just when you thought it couldn't get crazier. No, they are not focusing on affordability, on crime, both of which are going in the wrong direction in our state. But guess what the latest bill is that I know you have been waiting for? It's legalizing prostitution.
I mean, who hasn't asked themselves, why can't we pay people to have sex with us? Literally, no one is asking us that. No one is asking that question.
I know.
Yet, here we have a bill in the Colorado legislature that is going to technically decriminalize prostitution. It's going to take away the penalties and things of that nature. And I have to tell you, Deborah, I'm struggling a little bit with this. And here's why. I've always considered myself a small L libertarian. And at some points in my life, I've been a big L libertarian. I've been a registered libertarian. So when it comes to things like bodily autonomy, being able to do the things that you want to do with your body, I usually err on the side of freedom. However, I did a little research into this.
Yes.
And it's not just about allowing consenting adults to make their own choices. This industry as a whole, whether it is in a place where it's legalized or not, usually has some form of coercion. The coercion doesn't necessarily need to be hard coercion as you're going to have sex with this person for money. It could be, I'm desperate. I live in a place with no opportunity. I have children to feed. I have rent to pay. I have food to buy. That level of personal coercion is how many women end up in this industry.
Yeah.
So as a small L libertarian, I should be firmly on the side of you should be able to do what you want. Consenting adults should be able to enter into whatever arrangement they want to enter into. But the reality is, it's all the extraneous stuff that really, really gives me pause.
100%. And I agree with you. I'm smaller government, greater liberty, et cetera. However, I always end up looking also at what actually works. You know, if a policy works, I don't care if it's called left or right. If it actually works and helps people flourish and it gets government off your backs, great. But you were talking about studies. Let's talk about whether or not this actually works. Now, first of all, laws really tell us what is socially acceptable or acceptable in society and what isn't. I think most people and feminists used to be the voice saying that prostitution is not only not acceptable, it really is a way to victimize women. And you talked about that. The most vulnerable are usually drug into it. But let's just look at whether or not decriminalizing helps in any fashion. Because I would think most of us would say no matter what, less prostitution is probably a good thing because there is a demeaning in many ways of human beings in this situation. Well, there's a study of over 150 countries that have decriminalized. And what happened? Well, here's what it did work for. It actually increased demand. Yeah. You think about basic economic law. Once something is now legal, demand goes up. And then what happened is it leads to more marginalized and victimized women being pulled into it, usually through coercion. That's a hard word to say. Coercion, whether it is just their own desperation or being tricked into it. It also increases trafficking. Because when you think about it, in countries where this has been legalized, like Germany, the demand went up so hugely that people who understand economics, they're business people, they couldn't fill the demand. So then trafficking increases. And for instance, in Germany, most of the women, or a huge portion of the women who are now in this legalized, decriminalized state of prostitution, they're from some of the Eastern European countries who were tricked to come. And here in Colorado, where we are 9th for trafficking, isn't legalizing prostitution where it'll increase it just a Jim Dandy idea?
Well,
I don't think so.
I'm going to go back to the Amendment 64.
Yeah.
I'm going to go. We have a recent example in Colorado of being the first to do something, right? We were the first to legalize recreational marijuana, and lots of promises were made to voters. They were going to aggressively go after the black market. That has not happened. It wasn't going to be something that children could get their hands on. That hasn't happened. And it was going to bring in all this tax money for schools. That hasn't happened. So what are we to learn from Amendment 64 when we're talking about legalizing prostitution? Number one, as Deborah just alluded to, when you legalize it, demand goes up. Mm-hmm. We saw a huge influx of pot tourists when we legalized pot in Colorado. And all of a sudden, every hotel downtown, every floor on every hotel just smelled like weed. Now, pot is one thing, right? Like you're selling a plant. So that's one thing. But when you're selling a human being, and that is ultimately what prostitution is, you're selling access to a human being's body. Can we really afford to have any sort of promises about going after the black market or human trafficking or any of that stuff? Can we really afford to be the first to run that experiment? Can we really be the first state that's going to say to all of the horn dog men across the country, please come here and buy a woman? Is that what we're going to do?
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? Well, it's interesting. It's sad, actually. First of all, when you increase the supply, the demand is increased. We're talking about women in Germany and some of these other countries where guys fly from all over the world, and it's about $35 to $65 for this woman to sell her body. And the reality is, if it was just a freedom thing, that's completely different. It actually causes a huge increase in the suffering of these women. In Germany, where it's been legal since 2002, the status of these women, horrible conditions springing up all over the place, and it cannot actually be prosecuted or investigated because it's all hidden. If it's illegal, then how do you get people to say, oh, well, this was actually an illegal part of it? There is something that's interesting, however. There's the Nordic model, which does something slightly different. It allows women or whoever is involved in the selling of sex, it decriminalizes that so these women feel free to come out and actually speak to police, but it stays criminalizing the person who is purchasing it. And what we've seen in places like Sweden and Norway, it has cut prostitution in half. It's cut trafficking in half. It's 1/10 of all of that activity compared to Denmark, which is right next to it, where it's all decriminalized. That's one thing. If we want to look at a way to reform it and we want to help women, that could be a way to do it.
Not Denmark, Holland.
Holland
is where I actually did a deep dive on Amsterdam today. Have you ever been to Amsterdam?
You've been through quickly.
Okay, so Amsterdam is one of those things that will test your sense of open-mindedness. Okay. I always thought I was very open-minded. I was there on a layover as a flight attendant. So we were like, okay, let's go see what the red light district is all about. I got to tell you, I've always thought of myself as being fairly open-minded and liberal in certain ways of thinking, but I was genuinely shocked to see women in windows, soliciting people to come in and have sex with them. And I realized that there are going to be people who say, Amanda, you're just being a prude. But the reality is, as Deborah just said, in Holland, where it's been legalized forever, like 50 years, none of the prostitutes are from Holland.
Right.
None of them are Dutch. They're from Bulgaria. They're from Estonia. They're from Latin American countries. They're from places where they don't have a lot of opportunity. And the thing I'm the most concerned about is, regardless of how liberated our nation is, whatever you want to think, there is still a massive stigma around sex work. There are more and more young women coming forward with their stories of, my boyfriend talked me into having an OnlyFans page, and now I'm not making any money. I'm making $200 a month. My family won't speak to me. And I feel like, oh, by the way, the boyfriend is now an ex-boyfriend.
Right.
So all of that sort of nonsense is just going to get transferred into, you should try sex work. The money is great. The money's not always going to be great. And I think that young women are going to be lured in with the sense of easy money and this notion that somehow this is about empowerment. I'm not buying what they're selling.
Yeah, and where Mandy is very open-minded, I'm a bit more of a traditionalist. And I remember where is the line in this? I remember even being in Hollywood, one of the last events we went to, all these beautiful young women were basically selling themselves. Now they're trying to sell themselves for dating the right guy who could get you a job, for, hire me, for notice me just for my body. And it's really not a big step between that and what we're talking about. And honestly, all of the fight that we've had from the 60s and before to say, hey, we are women, we are not just our bodies, don't, objectify us, all of that. Really, when you think about it, I read this article when we were looking into this about a woman who broke out of the sex trade, and she knew a lot of other women who'd been in it. And she said, let's be honest, no woman chooses this usually if she has any other choice. So it is the desperate, marginalized women. It is those who are tricked into trafficking, who think they're going to Germany from Bulgaria, Romania for a better life. And no, now they have no rights. It is only proven to further victimize desperate women. And I 100% just think it is not healthy. And even if the facts didn't show it, I would want for women to have something more in their lives than just their bodies, something else. But it doesn't work. It increases all the worst elements.
And if Colorado really wants to do something to protect women who are in a situation where they're in sex work or they are, being trafficked, do exactly what they're doing in the Nordic states.
Yeah.
Protect the sex workers, go after the Johns. Problem solved.
There you go. And one last thing, by the way, growing up, Colorado was a tourism place for the beautiful Rocky Mountains, which is awesome. We are now a tourism place already for abortion up until, the moment of birth, for mushrooms and marijuana. Let's not also add to that the sex trade and legalized prostitution. That's not what I want our home state to be known for.
No, and one last comment on Amsterdam. Amsterdam's mayor is in the process of trying to rein in some of this tourism activity where people are coming in for either sex travel or drug travel. And she has been very, very open about the challenges that Amsterdam has faced because of their liberal policies up to this point. And it's not about the Dutch. It's about the people coming in from other countries who want to take advantage of it. And I don't want those people here.
I don't. Hey, if you like the Rocky Mountains, come and join us. Yeah. The other stuff, just don't. So there we go. Okay, another crazy bill going through the Colorado State Legislature right now. Last year, many of you probably were there or fought against 1312. Over 750 people showed up. Well, they gutted the worst part, which would allow the state to take a child away from their parents or their legal guardians if they decided not to transition their child. That got gutted because, once again, Colorado got to be known national news all over as the most extreme, out-of-touch state going in the wrong direction. Well, they cut it out and decided to reintroduce it as a brand new bill all on its own. This bill with the very Orwellian dystopian name, Legal Protections for the Dignity of Minors. My question is, protection for these children from whom? Because if it allows the state to take the child away from the parents who know them better than anyone, love them more than anyone, then what the state is really saying is the parents are the ones that the children need protection from. It's very disturbing.
It's terribly disturbing and it's terribly upsetting, especially in light of recent developments when it comes to gender-affirming care for children. Mm-hmm. Now, again, I feel like I have to say this every time, but I genuinely mean it.
Yes.
If you're an adult and you really want to undergo a series of surgeries to make yourself look more like another gender, I support you in that. If that's your journey, do whatever you want. We are talking about children, though. And across the country, states are beginning to reassess whether or not this is a productive thing to do. There was a recent study that came out and said, guess what? Affirming children's gender does not help their mental health. There have been the American Medical Association, the American Plastic Surgery Association, yes. They've come out and said, we're not going to do any more or recommend any more gender affirming medical care, mostly because they're afraid they're going to get sued. Let's be real. But between the Cass report in the UK that showed clearly that there was not significant evidence, there is not any great background of a body of work to demonstrate the efficacy of these treatments. And yet Colorado is in the process of doubling down.
It's crazy to me. And on top of that study, that is the newest one that came out. There's a 2025 Oxford study because England had one of the first clinics, Tavistock Clinic, and it shut down because it was shown that 95 to 96% of the children they transitioned actually were either on the spectrum or had underlying mental health issues. And that was the real cause of what they were going through. But this study, this Oxford study, 2025, also shows that the suicide rate of those who are transitioned goes up 17 times, that over 80% of children who experience dysphoria when they're young, gender dysphoria, outgrow it naturally by the time they're in their teen years. There were previous studies before this mad onslaught of transitioning children that showed the same thing. They were ignored. And now it's been proven once again. And you know what the best and most important aspect of helping children with gender dysphoria or even any kind of mental issue? This study reaffirmed it is the support of family and loved ones who know them the best, having fact-based therapy, science-based therapy, meaning based on the fact that if their image of themselves is not jiving with their chromosomal reality, helping them transition through that and sort through that, that's the best way to do it. So this bill would separate these children who are experiencing some kind of confusion from the very people that support them the most and have been proven time and again to help them with whatever they're dealing with. I got to tell you, we got to stand against this.
Well, and no offense to the foster care system, which does amazing work. There's never been a kid, there probably has been a kid, but most kids who are taken out of their homes with their stuff in a garbage bag, they're not looking to go to a house full of strangers just because they're going to say, yes, we're going to let you do this. I think that the best way to do it is to help families work through this with their kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just one more way that the state is trying to say, we are going to step in. We know better. And one last thing is this will also, if it passes, there will be damage until it is overturned in the Supreme Court, but it would be overturned in the Supreme Court. I'm 99% sure because we just had the 100th anniversary of the Pierce decision, which clearly outlined that parents have the fundamental right to guide the upbringing of their children. And they say in it, children are not mere creatures of the state. This bill, the proponents believe that these children are the creatures of the state and the state can override it. And by the way, one last thing I want to say, this isn't about like Christians versus LGBTQ. This is Muslim families, Jewish families, Hispanic families, secular families. The vast majority understand that the science is proving it's harmful for children. And parents who love their children are the most important thing to help them deal with anything that they're facing.
Okay, I want to move on to one last thing before we run out of time. I have to talk about, just for a moment, Marco Rubio's speech to the Munich Security Conference. And normally I would not say, you need to go seek this out and watch it.
A little dry viewing usually, but it was good.
It's only like 22 minutes long. So if you're not one for political speeches, this one will not put you to sleep. It was one of the most brilliant speeches of the 21st century so far.
Yes.
And I mean this in so many ways, because when you look at how the Trump administration has been aggressive with our European partners in an effort to get them to come to the table with the things that they've agreed to in terms of defense spending and things of that nature, there's been a lot of controversy about what our real relationship is with Europe. And in this speech, Marco Rubio, who I believe kicked off his presidential campaign, not on purpose, but just because of how good the speech was, he not only went over the history of our long relationship together, but he looked at the European leaders and said, we want to continue this relationship, but we will not sit by and watch Europe commit cultural suicide. And that's not a quote, but that's what he said. It is so powerful and so good and has so many quotable moments in it that I'm going to ask you to go look up Marco Rubio's speech to the Munich Security Conference. If you're worried about how we appear in Europe, if you're worried about how Europeans view us, You are only getting the view of the media here. You are not getting the standing ovation that Marco Rubio got at the end of that speech, where he essentially said to Europe, we want to be your partners, but you have to act right.
Yeah, I loved it. And, we'll post that on our Facebook page too, because that way you can see it there at Mandy _Deb. But I agree. And what I thought was amazing about it is he said, the Munich, this meeting has been going on ever since 1963. Why was that important? The Berlin Wall had just been erected 2 years before. They were facing the onslaught of the Soviet Union advancement and the advancement of communism. The Cuban Missile Crisis had just been averted. We were on the brink of nuclear war. And I love what he said. He said, we came together not just for what we were against, but what we were for, which was free society, Western civilization, civic rights. And he basically called out Europe for moving away from that. I mean, Europe has come so far from that when we all got together to fight against totalitarianism. When you look at Europe right now, freedom of speech, the free expression of religion, the right to gather, the right to peacefully protest, all those are being infringed upon. And I love the fact that he said in an inviting way, America is going to stand strong for this. And we'd like to join us, but we're going to do it anyway.
Right.
And he also called out globalism. He said that was naive. We went from standing against communism. And once we won that battle, we went under the naive impression that every single country would suddenly become this liberal democracy. And we wouldn't have to have borders and we wouldn't have to have national identities. And he said that went against human nature, 5,000 years of history, and he called them out and he talked about pulling back from it. But what was amazing is he did it in a hopeful, positive way.
A magnanimous way, if you will.
He did. He even said, we made this mistake together. Together, we can come back from it. And it's about time somebody talks not just about the problems, Mandy, but about the solution. And when he got that standing ovation at the end, I thought the same thing.
Just some of the leaders, the standing ovation was like,
yeah. Okay. Everyone else is up.
I can't sit through this. But there was also a lot of enthusiastic applause. And it was good to see because I think that message, it does resonate with, I have friends who live in the UK and in Ireland, and they're very proud.
Yes.
They're very proud Brits. They're very proud Irish. They're not interested in being a part of the European Union. They're not interested in being a world citizen. They want to be able to be proud of their culture and their company and their countries. And what they're seeing is, he also mentioned mass immigration, migration, and the damage that it has created. There's a very funny comedian. Actually, I've never seen him except this video. He did a video of him going to China and making the same demands that people are making in the UK. He's like, hey, we got too many noodle shops over here. Could we get some like bangers and mash? Could we? And then it kind of does make a mockery of the fact that you have people, and now there's a woman in New York City, a Muslim woman, who says that we need to ban dogs inside in New York City. And I was like, hey, lady, you're going to pry my St. Bernard out of my cold, dead hands. Like, that's not a thing that's going to happen. So culturally, to move somewhere else and then expect that somewhere else to bow in any way, shape, or form to your cultural norms is ridiculous unless you've conquered the nation.
Yeah, 100%. And he really, once again, helped ensure and increase the pride of Western civilization. It's like we've been made to feel ashamed of that when it's an amazing thing. And he was playing on the memories of the Europeans who were listening, saying, listen, Western civilization, Europe, our allies, it's the home of Leonardo da Vinci. It's the home of William Shakespeare. All of this freedom birthed some of the greatest inventions, some of the greatest art, some of the greatest cultural situations. And when that is being eroded, it is as though we are ashamed of our heritage. I thought it was great. It's going to be interesting to see for the Republican nomination because I liked Marco Rubio way back in 2016. And he's really grown and developed, and we'll just see what happens. But I got to say, it's nice to hear someone talk about the deeper principles and talk about it in a way where it inspires. I thought it was great.
And not apologizing for them.
Not apologizing. Okay, we're through with our issues for now.
We are through with our issues because we have issues for young people now.
Now we do. We've got stuff, and that stuff is issues for young people. So I'm going to start this off. Last weekend was Valentine's Day. Whenever you're watching this, there's always a Valentine's Day every year, so it doesn't really matter, but it plays into this right now. There's an interesting article that refers to a dating dating recession for young adults. And what it was talking about is how young adults made 22 to 35, their prime dating years. Something has changed. And as of right now, 75% of young women in that age group and nearly 2/3 of young men say that they have barely dated in the last year or not dated at all. And it's interesting because this survey, they made sure they focused on those who really want to have a significant relationship, which is about 86% of them. What's interesting is having young Gen Zers and raising them, seeing what happened after COVID, seeing how social media has made people more and more not get together in person. Fortunately, our kids wanted to get together in person, but many people no longer get together in person. They would sit in their basement. They would just text their friends who could be down the block. And they said one of the biggest reasons why these young people are not dating is they lack confidence. They don't even know how to do it. They don't know how to have the conversations. And I think it's something that needs to be addressed. It said over 60% don't trust themselves to pick the right person, to know how to talk about their feelings. I think we need some dating boot camps.
You know what's interesting? As a matter of fact, I've actually thought about doing this. Not dating boot camps, but just conversation boot camps.
Yes.
Where you sit people down and teach them how to have a conversation. The interesting part about this for me really is that this generation, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they've been raised in ostensibly one of the safest environments around, right? We've wrapped them in bubble wrap. We've allowed them to never fail. We've allowed them to never have a disappointment. And now we've realized that we've completely robbed them of the opportunities in 9th grade of asking a girl if she wanted to go steady, only to have her say no. Yeah. Right? That's not a big thing. I mean, it feels like a big thing when you're in 9th grade, but we all know.
It's huge at that age.
It's huge in 9th
puppy
grade.
Love.
But it's a lot easier to do that than walk up to a girl in a bar or at work and say, do you want to go get coffee or any of those? It feels more consequential as an adult. Mm-hmm. And to your point about COVID, I think COVID has screwed up these kids, and it's not their fault. I mean, to be clear, none of this is their fault. Nope. But by not having those early social interactions, when we were all, I was talking to a friend of mine about this, like my daughter, her friends don't really date. They don't really date. And when they do date, when they have a boyfriend, it's so much different than it was when I was young. They don't spend a lot of time together. They're in constant communication via apps or whatever, but they don't actually spend physical time together, which as a parent, you're like, well, no one's going to get pregnant. There's an upside there. But at some point, you're like, we would like you to get married and have babies at some point, So I think that we've stunted their development in terms of relationships. And I do think that we need to be clearer about when we say, when people are like, oh, what's your advice when you get married? And everybody's like, you got to communicate. Well, what the heck does that even mean?
They don't know how to communicate.
What I've started saying? What I've started saying in response to that is you have to be able to say the hardest things to the person you love in the kindest way.
Yes.
Okay. You have to be able to have a conversation where you look at someone and say, you are driving me absolutely insane. And if you don't stop that, I'm going to smother you with a pillow, which maybe isn't the nicest way to say something.
Well, it's not hit you over the head with an axe.
There you go.
It's a pillow.
Smother with a pillow. It's a soft way to die. Maybe. I don't know. But we don't do a good enough job. And I think, unfortunately, we as parents, we're on our phones too.
Yeah.
Are we modeling the right kind of behavior that we want our kids to have in relationships? Chuck and I, my husband and I, are very conscious of this because I'm his third wife. He is my second husband. I didn't have any kids from my first marriage. He did. And he knows how those interactions were received by his sons, right? So he now has the benefit of hindsight.
Right.
So we are very careful. If we have a fight, we will fight in front of our daughter, not, loud and violently, but then we will make up in front of our daughter because kids don't understand that relationships aren't always sunshine and roses. But just because you have a rainy patch, it doesn't mean that it's done forever. And I think that we need to do a better job of modeling the kind of relationships we want our kids to be in.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things that I agree about that being on the phone, even if you're dating somebody, they said so many of these young people, 2/3 of them, don't feel confident on picking up social cues. Like, does the person even like them? What does that expression mean? Well, how would it? Because emojis don't really capture the fullness of the human face and expression. Wait, which emoji was that? You know, I mean, you have to interpret it that way. So I think what's interesting, I'm hopeful because it talked about how so many people now in Gen Z want to be married. They want to have significant relationships, but we have not helped them be equipped. And I agree, modeling is so important. Let's be off our phones. Let's talk to one another face to face. Let's do it with our kids. Let's teach them. I mean, I've had to learn to do this because our daughter's autistic. So just because of her wiring, she doesn't pick things up. But that means our son's also been able to hear us say, no, when we do this, this is kind of what this means. But we need to let them know and help them break out of this. And honestly, let's start cutting down on the social media. Let's get rid of it.
But speaking of social
there
media,
is one we like.
There's a new app.
I didn't mean that.
Segue. There's a new app that was created by a Stanford student named Henry Wang. And it is called Date Drop. And it works like this. It kind of works a little bit like eHarmony in that you go in, there's a 66 questionnaire that you fill out. It has everything from, are your parents still married? What are your political views? Do you like pets? I mean, do you like to travel? Really basic stuff. And then every Tuesday night at 9 p.m., your date drops, meaning the app gives you a suggestion of another student at Stanford that you might match up with. And apparently Stanford freshmen are obsessed with this app. Not always in a good way. Like sometimes they're like, oh my God, my date dropped and it's horrible, you know, whatever. But it also creates an opening for them to have a real life conversation. There's a coffee shop on campus that gives the first cup of coffee for a date drop free. So you can go in, get a free cup of coffee, have a little date, get a little face to face. And I think that the reason this is different is it reduces all of those swiping options. Mm-hmm. And it says, this person might work for you. It's up to you what you do with this person. But this person is a person that you have things in common with. Yes. So it kind of strips away that over selection that you have and kind of cuts to the chase. And you know, I have a cousin who decided he wanted to get married. Like really dude was like 55. When he said, I really want to settle down, he looked for the dating app that provided the most information about compatibility and went to eHarmony and found a wife. And they are happily married and adorable and all of that good stuff.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that also sets this app apart is because they said they screen for those who really want a relationship. Yeah. It's different than Tinder, the hookup community. And I am encouraged because once again, I do think this generation has realized all the promises of the free and open, you know, casual sex promises. They're actually realizing that doesn't lead to what they want. They actually want to have a significant relationship.
But they're not even having casual sex.
I know.
They're not doing anything.
But they're lonely and they want relationship.
Yes.
And this app does screen for that. And I kind of think of it, if you've seen The Social Network, it's like the anti-social network. Because that one was a college app based totally on let's rate these girls, who's hot, who's not. And it was that voyeuristic thing. This is instead to have them actually have real relationships, go out on a date. There's a practical step, and it's gone to other universities. It's now expanded. This young man now has a business called The Relationship Company, and it's going to be coming to a city near you. So I think it's a positive step. That's okay, social media.
Yes, we like that.
Put down
that's
the rest
perfectly
of it.
fine. I mean, I think it's interesting to think about how many young people are struggling in this area because, and not that this is the way to do it, kids. Okay, I'm just going to preface this whole next statement that I'm going to make. But back in my day, we went to bars and drank a lot and hooked up with people and hoped it worked out. Or you met people at work, right? I mean, there's basically the two ways. Now, a vast majority of people are meeting online. Yeah. So if this can help sort of separate the wheat from the chaff a little bit and help people find the relationships they're looking for, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and this is why Mandy and I are a good balance, because I met my husband at church, and I do recommend that too, by the way. It's great to see. I know it's okay. It's all right. I just wasn't really into the bar scene. I was a goody two-shoes.
I mean, that's what we did. I know.
But I would say one thing that's really great is this movement also back towards faith, traditional values. We're seeing a really wonderful thing in Gen Z. We just need to give them the tools to do it. But so many people now are especially in the young community in churches, they're getting engaged and they're getting married earlier. So you got to find them some way. If that's not your thing, if you don't go to a place of worship, try out this app.
Well, I read an article today, as a matter of fact, about the increase in young people attending church.
Yes.
So ladies, if you're looking for a good, solid man who wants to get married and have kids, go to church, because they are going to church at a higher rate than women are right now.
They are, absolutely. The younger generation. It's
crazy.
Pretty amazing. Okay, so moving on. We've got good news. If that wasn't good news enough for you about the young generation, we have more stories. Would you like to start?
I've got one. It's kind of a nerdy science story, but I love stories like this. I just think this is super cool.
You love breakthroughs.
So we live in a super dry state here in Colorado,
Yes.
and water is always an issue, and conserving water is always an issue. So when I saw this story, I was like, this is what we need in Colorado. So scientists at the University of Sydney in Australia created a paint. It is a nano-engineered polymer created in conjunction with a startup called Dew Point Innovations. This paint, when put on the outside of any structure or even on a roof, does two very important things. One, it actually cools the building by about 6 degrees.
Wow.
But that's not even the coolest part. I mean, that's cool, but it's not this cool.
It's literally cool.
Yeah, it is. But it's also designed to be porous. So during the day, and especially at night, when there's more humidity in the air, even in an arid climate, it actually absorbs water and it can be collected. And you can use that water for irrigating crops or for creating hydrogen or for a variety of other things. They're not like in the drinking water area, but imagine if we could use that in our toilets or for gray water for watering lawns
plants,
or whatever.
yeah.
It's things like this that I think when we're talking about climate change, I always think about things like this. Invest in things like this to mitigate any climate change out there instead of spending a bunch of money trying to change the weather, doing things that are never going to work.
Here, here. I like that paint. Yeah. Okay, so mine is a little uncharacteristic for me because I usually like triumph of the human spirit stories, and I don't always overly focus on dogs or animals, but I do love our dog. But this story I thought was absolutely...
I love this story so much.
You know this one?
Yes.
So there was, in Louisville, Kentucky, there was an alert put out that a 3-year-old boy went missing. And what I think is great, and I just want us to remember this about the police, when there is a child under the age of 12, usually all local teams show up. I mean, they understand how important this is. So they did. And one police officer who had regularly patrolled this neighborhood, he knew it really well. He was knocking on this door, and they were going all over the neighborhood because it was in enough time. They figured the boy couldn't have gone too far, but they couldn't find him anywhere. So this one police officer is knocking on this door, and all of a sudden this dog, who he's never seen before, although he's been in this neighborhood for at least 2 or 3 years, started barking at him. And finally, when the police officer didn't pay attention, because he's like, well, this dog could, be rabid, who knows, or whatever, the dog started pulling on his pants leg. So finally, he kind of got the sense that this dog wanted to help him in some way. So he started following the dog. And the minute he said, and you see it on the body camera, it's this great footage. The minute he said to the dog, let's go, the dog runs off and waits for him at the corner, wags his tail, waits till he gets around, wags his tail, takes him to a house, a few houses down, takes him to the backyard, then goes to a car that is in the backyard and sits down. And finally, the police officer walks over and looks, and the little boy was sitting in the front seat. He was terrified. He had accidentally pushed the wrong button. He got trapped in his neighbor's car. You think about the fact that the oxygen could have gone out or any of that. And so then finally, they get the little boy, they talk him into unlocking it. The little boy throws himself at the police officer, holds onto his neck. And then you see as they're walking away, this dog just wagging his tail like it's so happy. Here's the kicker. This police officer and the neighbors have never seen this dog before or after. And the police officer actually said he thinks it was an act of God. I don't know. I mean, I do believe...
Lassie. I love Louisville Lassie.
And I do believe that all dogs go to heaven, and this one got some extra bonus points. So that's my good news story. Yeah,
I love it. Okay, so now for our random act of kindness, I told Deborah earlier, I'm like, I don't know if I have a random act of kindness. I have one now based on our We've Got Stuff conversation. If you know a young person that's single and looking, and you know another young person that might be a good match, set them up.
There you go.
Set them up.
I
Back
like
in
that.
my day, old women were always trying to set you up with somebody. Like,
Very
you
true.
need to meet my nephew. He is wonderful. They usually weren't wonderful. They were not wonderful.
I love
but
that.
Why not? I mean, I'm always like, when I meet a really dynamic, and most of them are my age in their 50s, when I meet someone who's really fantastic, male or female, I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I knew someone to fix them up with.
Yeah.
Right? And so why not?
I like
Do a little
that.
matchmaking.
I like that.
See if we can help these kids get married.
I think that is wonderful. It's time for the next generation of Yentas to present themselves. And my act of kindness ties in with my story. I know we say this, sometimes, and we've said it more than once, but when you see a police officer, do tell them thank you. The vast majority of what they do is not the stuff that makes the news. It's not the big story. It's stuff like this, helping find a child who's missing, helping someone who's elderly who has fallen. It's all these other little community things that they do. I love stories about police officers. One got a call, and this young man who was going to his first prom, he asked somebody out, didn't know how to tie a bow tie. He called the police department. They came and tied his bow tie. Make sure you thank them because they get beaten down in ways that they shouldn't. They put themselves on the line for us, and just make sure you thank them. Buy a cup of coffee, buy them a lunch, do whatever. Buy them a dog. Dogs are so cute. I'm just kidding. They may not want a dog. That's mine. So thank you for joining us.
Choke on buying a
I left her speechless. I got it all choked up.
All
A
choked
Louisville
up.
lassie.
I'm going to have to buy a dog. Buy a cup of dog now. That's going to be our new thing. No, thank you for listening.
Yes,
I'm a
thank
little
you.
verklempt just thinking about how good the show was.
There you go. Thank you so much for listening. Join us on Facebook, Mandy &Deb. Click the subscribe button and watch all the other great shows on IITV.
Bye, guys.